From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined, as always, with our super producer, Dylan, the Tennessee pal Fagan. Most importantly, you are you. You are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know at the most wonderful time of the year, fellow conspiracy realists. Now, we've been juggling some schedules, guys, as we returned, as we played catch up, as we got to hang with some very interesting
as we all got sick as hell.
Yeah, as we played ketchup and mustard and hospital in a couple cases. We had such a great time on our journey with several of our fellow listeners over with Virgin Voyage on their true crime cruise. And, you know, one thing that I think we all enjoyed about it was that a lot of our fellow listeners who were hanging out with us were asking us about episodes, right? Asking us about people, places, events, incidents. And I don't know what your experience was, but guys, a lot of folks were asking me about doing more paranormal episodes, supernatural, spooky stuff.
Well, 'tis the season, indeed. And I think we're all here for it.
Oh, yeah. Agreed. So what can we do but oblige? This time of year, more than any, we thought it would be appropriate to dive into an ancient, supernatural, dare we say infernal, concept. The idea that has haunted humanity since before the written word. The concept that there are certain unseen powers behind the curtain of reality, and that through specific rituals or actions, you can traffic with these forces for profound worldly gain at a price.
Well, and your results may vary, but consider this our best crack at a tutorial for you.
I like that setup.
We do have some tips and tricks, according to the Malleus Maleficarum.
Yes,
Ooh.
Check out our episode on grimoires as well for a deep dive into that. So we arrive at tonight's conspiracy. You've met us here on the crossroads of the internet at midnight. Our question: can people really sell their souls? Here are the facts. Every modern culture, Christianity aside, but every modern culture has some kind of version of selling one's soul, right?
Well, yeah. And it's all based on someone who chooses to live outside of the bounds that are set by whatever society they're living in.
Well,
right?
and it's also all based on the idea that we have a soul, and that is like sort of one of those religiously syncretistic things. This idea of the magic bit inside of us that makes us alive and sentient.
That 21 grams that makes you special, as hip hop and weird science love to say. I mean, it's weird that, weird's not the right word. It's fascinating that even in an increasingly secular climate, the concept of selling one's soul is still very common. Today, it's often an idiom, and it means you are sacrificing integrity, values, and principles for some sort of perceived gain, right?
Selling out, like Bill Burr.
Right.
did.
The most notable example recently in the Western world being Saudi Arabia's comedy festival earlier this year.
Yeah. And a lot, exactly like that. And a lot like taking on a giant loan to me. That's the way I see selling a soul.
Where your soul is kind of the what's the word? The collateral, right?
In some way, your soul is the thing that, let's say, if you're going to buy some crazy mansion or something, as especially an older person, and you will probably never ever pay off that giant mansion that you just put some collateral down on, but forever until you die, you will be paying that. Well, I guess in this case, you'd be paying after you're dead too. Never mind.
No, it makes sense. I'm with you, Matt, because
there's some eternal qualities to this bargain. Yes.
Yeah, very Sea Org, right? It's a guarantee. It's using some scientifically undefinable part of oneself, arguably the most important part in religious schools of thought, as an asset, right, that you can leverage. And when we go to the secular meaning, to return to this for a second, we're we've heard ad nauseum all kinds of opprobrium and criticism for those big name comics. People like Bill Burr, Aziz Ansari, Dave Chappelle, all the hits. The folks who don't need the money, by the way, took the bag and performed at the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and a lot of diehard fans, nonprofits, activists, stand-up colleagues, they gave these folks a lot of heat about this because KSA has an atrocious human rights record. They have a lot of money. Just to put it diplomatically and transparently, despite the kingdom's official denials, pretty much everybody outside of the KSA is pretty sure that, like Russia, the KSA tortures and murders people with no real consequence.
I know. How could those comics do that and then come home to this country where all we do is murder people on boats randomly in the ocean all the time?
At least some of the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, there's no better way to interrupt an electoral process than to start a war. And the CIA is kind of pissed right now.
Or divert attention from a certain stack of documents that
Sure.
certain individuals would prefer remain buried.
I know. I'm surprised it hasn't acquired that beautiful gate suffix yet for political scandals in the U.S. You know, there's Watergate, there's Iran Gate. You just add gate to the back of something.
Gate.
Epstein Gate. Why has that happened yet?
It's a good question. I wonder if it's just no longer in vogue. Maybe that is a relic of the past. But I would love to see some more gates.
Mm-hmm.
So, speaking of Epstein, have we done a whole episode on Jean-Luc Brunel?
We have not.
I don't believe
Let's
so.
do an entire episode on that guy who was Epstein's like partner and a very close associate of Epstein.
Well, yeah, the fact that I'm not even familiar with this name and have obviously been following this story very closely speaks volumes to me, at least. I would love to know more about this person. I'm certain we did. It's just, does not seem like a name that's floating around in the zeitgeist nearly as much as it clearly should.
Dude was a French modeling agent, and he got caught up in all this stuff, was like on the plane all the time, was one of the guys that brought girls to Epstein, and he was found hanged in his cell in 2022.
The flip.
We need to do a whole episode on this.
Yep, agreed. So back to selling one's soul here. You could argue.
Speaking of as well.
Right. Yeah, sure thing. Well, you can see the accusations of selling one's soul now, the way it's commonly used, people don't really mean anything paranormal or supernatural about this. They're saying, like you said, Noel, the concept of selling out. And we see these accusations all the time in modern history, startups to politicians, your favorite punk band that makes it big, musicians, authors, even podcasters and streamers and game developers. But the question then becomes, why does selling one's soul have such rhetorical weight? Why is it still such an insult in a world where people are increasingly irreligious?
Well, and obviously we're going to get into the religious aspects of it and the lore of it. But even if you look at a lot of those religious texts or some of these stories as more of a teachable kind of parable, it really does one-to-one go with this idea of selling out, of doing the bad thing for the great gain, you know?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And
I think especially if it hurts other people in your rise to power or prominence or whatever it is, if other people are injured, like either bodily or mentally or whatever, I think that is when it really comes into this selling your soul thing.
It's also a real mechanism or an observation of deferred gratification. A lot of times the way, and we'll see several of these stories as we continue, but one of the common tropes or the common errors of a main character in a story about selling your soul is something that we all do even today without the interference of satanic powers. You put a lot of stuff on the future you, right? Mm-hmm. There's stuff you should do, but it's Saturday and it's nice night. So you put that on Sunday, Ben, or tomorrow, Matt, or next day, Noel. And this is a common thing. This is something we'll see a lot in the concept of selling one's soul as well, especially Faustian bargains. maybe we can say the reason it still holds such weight, the idea of selling one's soul or selling out, is because multiple civilizations genuinely did and do believe in what we're describing, the concept of a soul, that infinitesimal little piece of the divine in every single human being, just by the virtue of being human.
That bright light inside you, as they say in yoga practice. You got to honor it, you know?
Yeah, and we see this across religions, not just the Abrahamic ones, but Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism. Most spiritual belief systems factor in the existence of something like a soul. Now, like you said, your mileage may vary. They got their own specific beliefs about how a soul works, what it means in life, what it does or does not mean after your physical death. And usually, to be quite honest, these spiritual belief systems don't agree with each other because a lot of organized religions hinge on the idea of exclusivity.
Well, even the idea of having soul, or the cultural implications of you got soul, man, soul music, a lot of that derives from gospel music and religious music, and then becomes a little more R&B coded or funk coded. And there is now this kind of concept of if someone's got soul, that means they got vibes, right? They've got they got attitude, but like in a good way.
Yeah, but what good is the soul anyway if that soul is worshiping the wrong deity? What are you going to do with that soul?
That is the ultimate religious quandary, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
What if you got it wrong?
That's the thing, right? Yeah, that's the thing about religion. The credits don't transfer in most of these things.
And you don't know till the end whether you bet on the right horse.
What if it's Shakers? Oh man.
What if that's really what it is, though? At the end, you get like an equivalent credit for however awesome of a worshiper you were of whatever you worshipped. You get like a little score. Like, you know what? You did great.
You get your GED, your God enough diploma.
And there's a leaderboard up there somewhere, and you get to see the little ding, 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 and that determines your place in the afterlife, whether you get like, a condo or a mansion or a palace.
I don't like a hierarchical afterlife. That just seems so unnecessary.
Hey, just spitballing here, guys. I'm with you, though.
I hear you.
That's why I always liked the concept of karma, because it felt like it was quantitative in a way. Less qualitative. Like, did you
paying
do
into
good
the system
or bad, and how much?
Right, and how would that be measured? If you haven't seen the excellent philosophical comedy, The Good Place, please do check it out. If you like this episode, then that series is right in your Q zone.
Yeah, put it in my Q zone.
So here's the thing. Okay. You can look at all sorts of established denominations of larger religious belief systems, and you will always find splinter groups or sects that claim they are the ones with the true understanding of afterlife, metaphysics, and mechanisms, and anyone who doesn't follow their particular brand is doomed to hell or a less good afterlife. But we have to ask, if a God does exist, then why does this all-powerful entity not just drop by for like a TED Talk every few months to set the record straight? I mean, that guy, God, according to so many religious texts, used to show up all the time. You know what I mean?
Pop-ins. Yeah,
just pop it, burn a bush, had some advice, came up with some rules.
Yeah, but if you check out the Malleus Maleficarum, there is a deity that will stop by every time there's a conclave of his/her worshipers.
Yeah, or it's, right? Because the Malleus is a hit piece, as we'll see, but the Witch's Hammer does get into some pretty juicy specifics. I mean, the idea, though, of selling one's soul comes from other older pre-Christian narratives, the things that said, unseen powerful forces exist. They are sentient, right? They are sapient, so they are thinking and they are wise, and they can interact with you. They're just not human. This could be a brownie, be an ancestor spirit, a jinn, a demon, a loved ghost, an angel.
Well, and the implication there is that God, or whichever deity you worship, owns your soul, or is, in some way has a stake in your soul, and you are more or less taking that away from the good side and lending it or, selling it over to the bad side. You are switching teams for all intents and purposes.
Right. It's a profound spiritual betrayal. I mean, we know the rise of modern monotheism arguing for just the existence of one single God, we know that really simplified a lot of spirituality, because now we can say there is an sacrosanct good and an established bad, an oppositional force, and they're both working continually around the clock to either save humanity or obliterate it. And Christianity and Islam, we could say, are particularly vulnerable to this binary concept. You know, Christianity has the saints and the prophets, and Islam has the prophets and the jinn. But you can pray for the intercession of the saints in some types of Christianity. You can pray to that saint, even though you're saying there's only one God.
And I'm sure this is the case in other religions too, but in Christian lore and text, there are minor demons. There are lesser, infernal entities that all have names and have their own mythology behind them and all that stuff. And you could absolutely sell your soul to one of them or worship one of them, like a case in point, Paimon.
Yes.
All hail from Hereditary.
Azazel, Baal, of the other fallen angels that kind of Wu-tanged up with Lucifer in the beginning of the fall. Yeah,
and they're all like generals that command a certain number of armies.
That's right.
Princes of hell. Yeah.
They really
the Lesser Keys of Solomon, I believe, is a text that outlines a lot of those. That's where Paimon came from anyway, that I'm aware of.
Yeah, also mentioned in our Grimoire episode. So I love that callback. We know that those devils, those demons and their principalities, also similar in inversion of the concept of patron saints, they have power over certain earthly things, right? Be that the weather, be that finance, be that romantic interest. So you're right. It's a seller's market. You can find somebody who or something that specializes in the stuff you want and maybe crack a deal. You can also, in Islam, you can make deals with the jinn because they're one of God's creations. They're surprisingly similar to humans. But there are more things out there, right? And then in all of our imaginings, deep in the sea, high in the ink of space, right behind you sometimes, folks. Tonight, maybe we hone in on the Christian idea of selling one's soul, because this could be a series if we look at all different religions throughout history.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So how about we share rituals and stories of people who either genuinely attempted to summon the old gods, demons, or devils, or genuinely believe that they had sold their soul. And then we can end on, of course, the priceless question: has anyone actually managed to sell their soul? Here's where it gets crazy. Yes, at least according to the stories. All right. Now, as we pointed out earlier, to believe in this magical process, you got to have some starting axioms. You have to already assume that infernal and divine powers exist, because they can't exist without each other. And then, just for the sake of conversation, we'll take that as a given. The concept of making a deal with the devil, trading your immortal soul for worldly reward, it dates so far back in Christianity. We all know the story in the New Testament where Satan tempts Jesus in the desert, which is basically a sell your soul pitch, right?
Well, and a lot of these, too, are monkey's paw type situations where you get the thing that you think you want, but there are like knock-on consequences that you did not consider that make the whole thing you wanted sort of not worth it in the first place. And a lot of this stuff you'll see in folklore and folk tales. And one of my favorite depictions of this bargain is Ariel selling her soul to the sea witch in the freaking Little Mermaid. I mean, it's more personified as her voice, but it's this glowing orb that comes out of her, and then she's blessed, I guess, with the ability to walk on land, but then there's all of these horrific knock-on consequences, and ultimately the sea witch is the devil and has her in the palm of her hand to get exactly what she wants out of the situation, which is what you see in a lot of these black mass Christian kind of antichrist kind of ceremonies.
I love that. It's astute. And Ursula is just a real pill.
Oh my God, terrifying too. And she gets all big and stuff at the end. Man.
Yeah. I mean, another example, of course, would be that episode of The Simpsons where Homer trades his soul for a donut. Mm-hmm. Speaking of like instant versus deferred gratitude, of course,
was it just one of those classic sprinkle Simpsons donuts too? It had to have been with the layer of icing and then just like the little, it had to have been. Not even stuffed, not even like a cream filled, just a standard. Yeah,
he wasn't thinking ahead. Treehouse of Horror is just the best part of The Simpsons, I think.
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
And has relatively maintained, even in their lesser years. Usually you'll see a Treehouse, and because of its inherent anthology type style, usually continues to work.
That's
Some
the only one I
better than
watch
others. Yeah.
at this
Mhm,
point.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. The specifics of the process. Let's say you want to sell your soul, and they vary based on the source, but Western or Christian soul selling usually follows a few key beats, right? It's Joseph Campbell stuff. It's story structure. It's folklore. It's tropes. The person seeking a deal makes contact with the devil or another demon through a ritual, like a black mass, right? Maybe they get together and have their dark Tupperware party, or they consult a grimoire for instructions on going solo and doing their own summoning ritual.
Or they can go into a church and just renounce all of the stuff in the church and pledge their loyalty to, they call him the little master in the Malleus Maleficarum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like that.
Well, again, it's a book written by enemies of these beliefs. I don't know. Oh gosh, I want to re-listen to the Grimoire episode again.
I'm going to keep bringing it up. I'm sorry, because it's got actual instructions in there on how people confessed to how they sold their souls to the devil.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about some of those folks too in specific. Okay, so a black mass. How would we explain a black mass, and what is deistic Satanism?
It would be a bastardization or a blasphemization of a Catholic mass, that is meant to honor God. This is almost like a inverse of that.
Yeah, that's exactly right, man. It's a intentional perversion, blasphemous parody of a Catholic mass in specific. Deistic Satanism is what people mean when they're talking about a satanic panic. It's acknowledging that a God exists and therefore an opposition party to that God exists. So that's separate from other Satanism, which just uses the symbolism and language of these belief systems, but doesn't actually think there's an evil bad guy or little master or good man, as he's called.
They're just using iconography to their ends, right?
Yeah.
Like as a way, and I'm a fan of that. Like I love co-opting religious iconography. I think they're beautiful and they can be really powerful and a fun way of maybe doing a little bit of satire and maybe, like I have a whole wall in my house that's just crucifixes. I'm not Catholic, and there's something almost slightly blasphemous about having a giant wall of nothing but crucifixes, and that like does it for me a little bit. I don't mean to sound like, oh, I'm so clever, but it's just that's sort of something that I'm interested in, is like subversion rather of religious symbology.
Yeah. And that can be, that's a personal journey too. It's not necessarily offensive at all. I think it's an aesthetic. The crosses in black masses are, of course, inverted, as you said, all manner of unclean and, per the stories of witch hunters, really nasty things take the place of the Eucharist, like various bodily fluids, maybe actual human flesh from a sacrifice, all kinds of stuff.
Certainly drinking of blood, right?
Yeah.
Like blood sacrifices.
Seminal fluids, yeah.
Unbaptized children was really popular.
Right, especially in the film series Warlock.
And in the Malleus Maleficarum.
Mm-hmm.
So most primary sources on this, let's talk about why it's so skewed. Most of the primary sources on selling one's soul or consorting with the infernal, they come from Latin and French, and they were not created by people engaged in these practices, if they existed. They were created by Christian authorities who wanted to crack down on belief systems or practices that didn't match the uniform state religion. So the majority of the actual literature you can find, not just the Hammer of Witches, but all the other grimoires we mentioned, the majority of that is written by critics, not supporters, not fans, not people with necessarily firsthand experience. They're trying to smear the character of these folks who were outside of the norm. There's a statement in Japan that translates to the nail that stands out will get hammered down. That's why they call it the Hammer of Witches, because this is a socio-political control mechanism.
The squeaky wheel gets the grease or the bodily fluids.
Yes. Most of the stuff that's in there was extracted from people who were either, actively being tortured or had been tortured for, weeks or months, or we're trying to get out of being tortured. So
and as we know, that game of telephone is already a little wacky in terms of the way things mutate over time. Think about how that's contributed to by people who are under duress and just trying to say something that rings true or sounds just demonic enough to be believed, so that you'll get a quick death.
Or feed names. Feed names of other people, especially when you're prompted to do so. What do you think about Good Wife Mary? Oh, yeah. Oh, she's totally a witch. Can I keep my other fingers? That's what's happening. Right.
Why do you keep worshiping the evil one? Torture, torture, torture.
Right.
Why are you worshiping the evil side? Torture, torture, torture. We're the good guys.
Yeah, check out our How Dare You Have a Birthmark. Check out our series, not just one episode, but our series on whether or not torture works. Spoiler, it does not work the way it's advertised.
Absolutely not. And like I said, it's a random numbers generator of weird that just kind of gets absorbed by the culture, and then telephoned, throughout history. And I'm pretty sure that's where some of these confessions, quote unquote, of rituals come from. And then they get sort of tweaked and adjusted over time.
Embellished, yeah, especially because they're a powerful political tool. They're a social control mechanism. There wasn't much in the way of fact-checking at the time. As a matter of fact, acting as a fact checker makes you look kind of witchy yourself. So people were very frightened of witch hunters and witch finders and the Inquisition. And we learned a new word in the research for this. A guy named Epiphanius of Salamis was a 4th century heresiologist, a guy whose job is just to study heresy. Pretty neat thing to say on a first date.
No doubt. Yeah.
So he is he's a great example outside of the usual grimoires of someone who uses accusations of infernal trafficking and selling one's soul to attack an outsider group in his society. He says there's this Gnostic sect called the Borborites, and they have a perverted version of Mass. This may not be appropriate for all folks.
Gross.
3, 2, 1. They smear their hands with menstrual blood and semen and consume them in a parody of the body and blood of Christ. And people believed it. They were like, look, this guy took the time to write it down. Why would he be lying?
Reasons.
Right.
we discussed. I love that you're mentioning the black goat, Ben. I think we're all 3 or 4 of us here big fans of Robert Eggers, The Witch, which I think personifies the Black Mass incredibly well. No spoilers for that, but this idea of, being in Congress or having some sort of dialogue with this black goat, Black Phillip. In the film. Mm-hmm.
I love that Twins song too. Do you guys think the Twins were witches?
I think they had been bewitched.
Okay.
And also there's something inherently creepy about twins. And I think maybe the film is leaning on that a little bit, but I do think that's the case. I think whether they were possessed or in some way a harbinger or like a, what's the word? Like a medium to carry whatever infernal forces. I think they were part of it in some way.
Like a vector for disease.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, I like that take.
I've got something from the Malleus Maleficarum if you want to hear it about the children and all that stuff, which is like kind of applicable here. This is exactly what we just talked about. It's some kind of confession, right? A coerced confession. This is a woman saying, we set our snares chiefly for unbaptized children, and even for those that have been baptized, especially when they have not been protected by the sign of the cross and prayers. And with our spells, we kill them in their cradles, and even if they're sleeping by their parents' side, in such a way that afterwards they're thought to have been overlain or have died in some other natural death. Then we secretly take them from their graves, and we cook them in a cauldron, until the whole flesh comes away from the bones to make soup for which may easily be drunk. Of the solid matter, we make an unguent, which is of
poultice, like a gooey thing you rub all over yourself, which is also in The Witch. Sorry, please carry on. Yep.
Which is of virtue to help us in our arts and pleasures and our transportations, as in like
Flying.
physically or spiritually transporting. And with the liquid, we fill a flask or skin. Whoever drinks from which, with the addition of a few other ceremonies, immediately acquires much knowledge and becomes a leader in our sect. So to me, that's like that.
Bro.
You're gaining something from doing these horrendous things in essentially selling your soul.
I know Eggers really dug into a lot of like writing from the period and tried to make things really accurate. He had to have been familiar with this book that you guys are talking about.
Yeah, he's definitely familiar with that grimoire. He's also familiar with the writings of people like Increase or Cotton Mather, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, and pretty well read up on the ergot theories. And then also read up on the idea of using hallucinogenic substances as a masturbation aid, which is one of the possible theories for the broomstick or the other flying implements.
And also, if you're, tripping your balls off, you may very well believe that you're flying,
Dude,
that could be.
I've had conversations with goats. You know what I mean? Nothing wrong with it.
But Matt, you mentioned the word transportation, I believe, in that little passage you just read, and the way it's depicted in some of the lore that I've seen that was depicted in The Witch is rubbing that goo all over them is what helps them fly. Like truly transportation, not just like, some sort of spiritual movement, but like literal flying through the sky on their, broomsticks.
Yeah, because from the eyes of the enemy forces, the authorities who are conducting this torture and social control, through their eyes, all of the stuff they consider black magic has to be a pay on demand kind of arrangement. So for instance, I mean, and again, all these confessions, in my opinion, are BS, even though Malleus Maleficarum did have rules on paper about how confessions under torture had to be confirmed. If you confess under torture, you have to be moved to another place. And then in that other place with these other people, the victim has to confirm that they were truthfully confessing and that it was not due to the fact that someone was torturing the shit out of them. Thank you for the beat, Dylan.
But I mean, torture is going to come again if you don't give them the right results. So there's an implied, you better corroborate.
Yeah. At this point in time, Geneva is just another town. It is not it's not the inspiration for the Geneva Conventions.
Yeah. I think there's something really interesting in this, though, in this time period. You're talking 1480s, 1487, when that book is written, when, and well before that's when all the things that were basically ripped, he ripped a bunch of people off when he wrote that book. What was his name?
Heinrich Kramer.
And Jacob Springer.
Yeah.
So there's this thing, though. I've been to a lot of churches, guys, and I have never seen God or Jesus or any deity appear before the congregation during any kind of ceremony, no matter what it is. Been to a lot of weddings where God is supposed to be there. Been to a lot of religious ceremonies, and there's never been a deity involved. According to these stories that are written in this book, and I think this is why it's so powerful and maybe why so scary to established religions, especially Christianity. According to these writings and these forced confessions, at the conclaves, at the places where, the devil is worshipped, the devil shows up, according to these things, like shows up in person as a man. And they don't say like sometimes, they say every time, right? And so they're placing that in the mythology of it as, and imagine how powerful that would be if you went and you prayed and the God that you're worshiping shows up in physical form every time. That would be a huge challenge to your religion if your priests can't make the God show up.
Right. Yeah. So going back to the concept we were originally exploring here, the story beats or the process of selling one's soul, there's the infamous signing of one's name in the devil's book. This is the direct representation of selling your soul in exchange for power on earth or some kind of worldly response, be that true love, be that finding gold, or in Homer Simpson's case, getting a sick donut, the taste of butter, a pretty dress, all the hits.
Just the taste.
Taste.
And again, in Little Mermaid, Ariel very aggressively has to scrawl her name in this glowing tome that really does have Devil's Book vibes. I know it's more of a contract. Maybe it's not a book, it's a scroll kind of thing, but the imagery is absolutely there.
Yeah, and these are just a couple of examples, but they are, we could argue, illustrative because you can see how everything about this propaganda, which is what a lot of it is. Everything about this propaganda provides a very convenient rationale for church authorities and witch finders to seek support as they quash spiritual rivals or even just financial economic rivals in the wrong part of town. Because one thing I remember taking college classes on this in particular, but one thing that happened a lot with the Inquisition is these guys were working on commission. So they didn't make money if someone ended up being innocent, but if they did bring somebody back to Christ, or if they did find and stop a witch, then they got their vig at the end from that person's assets. So that's why older single women were often targeted. That's why a lot of religious minorities were targeted. There was a very real conspiracy at play. I mean, yeah, did people do things that would look like a black mass to outsiders on a routine basis? Maybe, because it was a non-Christian religion, right? They could have been an animist or a nature-worshiping kind of organization or institution. And yeah, maybe they're dancing around with garlands. Maybe they do have a black goat, and maybe they put some stuff on the goat, right?
Dude, you know what just occurred to me? The taste of butter thing. I think we've talked about this on this show, but also in Ridiculous History. These butter boxes where people would put money in these boxes to buy themselves indulgences in order to be able to enjoy butter, because it was inherently considered too decadent or like too sinful. So I think the taste of butter thing is a direct ref to that.
Oh, that's really cool. No,
it just occurred to me.
That. Yeah. Brilliant. I mean,
oh crap, guys! I cook with a lot of butter. Oh no,
well, you are damned, my friend.
Oh, dang it!
Just write to the new pope and tell him you'll buy him some Fernet. That's how those deals work.
Or some Malort.
Oh yeah, that's the one, Malort.
Yeah.
I mean, they're both equally. I'm choosing the high road. All right,
there you go.
So. Look, some newly initiated devil worshippers might sell their souls at a black mass, but that also might not be the primary focus. Again, not for nothing will we say in an infernal Tupperware party. To Catholic authorities, the black mass is regularly conducted just to sort of celebrate Satan in general, and then to get together and say, here's some stuff I did to further the cause of Satan in the world. You know, poisoned a well. Cow went sick. I made sure that the neighbors' kids were stillborn, all kinds of stuff like that. But you also don't have to go to the party to sell your soul. There are tons of other rituals, maybe animal or human sacrifice. You make a summoning circle wrought with signs and sigils. You prepare your magical ingredients. You recite a certain magical phrase or incantation. Abracadabra, Paimon. Knock, knock. Who's there? Simsalabim.
Is there a world, Ben, where you could sell your soul by accident?
Oh, man. That's interesting, right? Because I think the parables tell us that people sell their souls without realizing the consequences, or as you said, a monkey's paw situation where they don't know what they're wishing for. But I do like the idea of accidentally selling one's soul. You'd have to really stumble through some stuff there.
That's exactly right. A real perfect storm of happenstance. I actually just Googled sell your soul by accident, and a Reddit thread came up in our Christianity. I'm worried I might have accidentally sold my soul. And the first response is, if you are wondering if you sold your soul, then no, you did not sell your soul. People who sold their soul know that they sold their soul.
We read a lot of Christian sources for this too, and it's surprising even there how divided opinions can be across denominations.
Well, I think to a point we mentioned earlier, there is a sense in certain religious denominations that your soul is not yours to sell.
Yes,
your
exactly.
soul is the property of God. So it's not even like possible for you to do this.
Right. Or that you, because you cannot sell your own soul, some denominations would argue when you think that you're doing that, you're just committing a great sin, but you can still pray for forgiveness. So it's not the end of the game for you. That's a nicer version of the selling the soul story.
I don't mind that.
I don't mind it.
Yeah. I think there's a version where you are tricked into believing you've sold your soul to do those horrifying things that are, outlined in all of these sources or whatever. And then you're not actually doing any kind of buying or selling. As you said, Ben, you're just committing the awful act. So there's no way to get into the good place the actual good place anymore.
But
you get sent
those
to the
do still
quote,
qualify
good
for
place.
absolution if you play your cards right down the line, right?
Right.
Maybe if you have enough money.
Put enough money in that butter box.
Well, depending too upon your denomination, right? So a lot of this, again, is coming from enemies of pretty much anybody non-Catholic. Those are the folks who are writing about this. And as we're going to see, at no point in all of history has anybody conclusively been proven to have sold their soul, mainly because no one has conclusively scientifically proven the existence of demons or Lucifer the Lightbringer.
Or souls.
Or souls. But as we're about to see, tons of people have been murdered on the basis of these accusations, and there are tons of people throughout history who, for one reason or another, claim to have sold their souls and appear to really believe they did it, which is
and lots of
nuts.
rumors too, right?
Mostly rumors, in attempts at political or physiological assassination. What say we pause for a word from our sponsors and get into some examples?
Huzzah, I say.
Yeah. All right, we're back. One of the first examples is a guy named Saint Theophilus of Adana.
Yes, Saint Theophilus. Theophilus of Adana is one of Christianity's older examples of someone successfully selling their soul. So Theo, as you have nicknamed him in the doc here, Ben.
Just Phyllis takes a while.
Familiar.
Yeah.
It's a familiar. Yeah, exactly. We like Theo. He's got a good story here. He was indeed likely a real person who lived and died so long ago, however, that a lot of what we attribute to him has become, at this point, that game of telephone that results in lore and legend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But definitely a real dude, right? But I love how you're saying this. He was born so long ago that he's definitely become a kind of larger in life figure. But he is an actual facts Catholic saint. According to the story, our buddy Theo is working in Adana, what we call modern day Turkey today. He gets offered the position of bishop, and he's humble as all get out. He's the opposite of a corporate shark. So at first, Theo says, thank you, but, I'm not some big-time guy. I'm just doing my best. And then he runs into an issue, real insult upon injury. The church goes, they find this other guy to be the bishop. And this guy has it out for Theo. For some reason, he's mad at him. So he either unfairly removes Theo from his post, or he doesn't give him what he feels is an appropriate high-ranking position in the local clergy. So Theo's not having it. He's not having it. He reaches out to a wizard in the area, as you do, I guess.
Local wizard.
Yeah. Wizard goes through his Rolodex and puts Theo in touch with the actual devil, Satan, Lucifer. And Satan comes in and he says, bud, look, I can make you the bishop if you renounce Christ and the Virgin Mary and sign this contract in your own blood.
That's how it usually goes.
Normal negotiation. That's how we sound our contracts. Wait, do you guys get to sign yours in pen, or do you have to use blood too?
I mean, I tick a box where I give permission for it to be, for my digital signature to be transubstantiated into blood.
Love it.
Hey, and this is your reminder, everybody out there who works a corporate job, it's time for open enrollment wherever you work. So make sure you sign your name in blood on all those documents for you and all the people you take care of.
And open enrollment is just a terrible bit of language. It's just a dumb phrase. Open enrollment, whatever.
It is dumb. It is dumb.
Yeah, sorry. All right.
Hey, you know what I found out, guys?
What's that?
In our state where we live, you can't have a dependent who is a domestic partner if they're of the opposite sex.
Right. Yes, that is. I
Isn't
ran
that
into
fun?
that as well.
Wait, what?
Yes.
Why?
You can't have a civil
Because they want you to
partnership.
marry? It's sort of like, I guess it's waiting in favor of like, well, you got to get married because, that is
God
a little
and
bit
stuff.
puritanical. No, that's not great.
Yeah, thanks for making those conversations awkward. Appreciate
The
that
state.
extra non-needed pressure, big government, which is such a big government thing to do. It's quite the opposite. Anyway, no. I'm like Jesus walking away from the cliff, not doing the soapbox now. I think we're all aligned on that because we're pretty reasonable entities. But all right, so Theo negotiates with Satan, and he comes to regret his decision. This story has kind of a happy ending. So it's either soon after or several years into the game, he says, you know what, guys, that's a boof on my part. I botched it. I botched the whole thing. I'm publicly confessing. I'm going to make amends with the guy who's that other bishop, and I'm going to pray. I'm going to make a big to-do about it in front of the congregation, and then I'm going to fast. Like I am going on a hard, super starvation level fast, and eventually that other bishop burns what Theo says is his contract with Satan and saves his soul. So there's no torture in this one.
Okay.
This is
also,
pre-Inquisition.
It does imply, though, that was a binding in some way contract and that it required some form of intervention to nullify. So this does not necessarily follow that whole, like, the soul is not yours to sell version of things.
Exactly. Yeah, denominational difference. I mean, you may have never heard of Theo, folks, but this story may sound eerily familiar, and that's because it's the basis for the most famous example of soul selling ever, Faust. Man, I love the Faust story.
Also an excellent German experimental band from the 70s, Faust. Love them. Yeah, and it's also the basis of many of the there's Dr. Faustus, of course, the play. There is the opera Faust. I mean, this is an incredibly repeated and kind of styled on version of this exact trope.
Yeah, and like Theo, Faust is a real dude. The inspiration for the Faustian tale of interactions with the devil does feature a guy named Johann Georg Faust, living in the late 1400s to mid 1500s, prime time to sell your soul in Western Europe. And this guy, okay, it's interesting because historians are divided. He's either a wandering alchemist, astrologer, and magician or hedge wizard, or he's just a con man and a heretic.
Hey, look, one man's wizard is another man's con man / heretic. So both things can be true.
You could be all of it.
Exactly.
Right. Sometimes the magic works and sometimes you've just rigged the deck. So,
I mean, Merlin was a bit of a huckster, in his own way, but he also did have some powers. But he loved a power move, and he was a manipulator.
I love we've referenced it before, but I love the description Twain has in A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, because the Yankee is really interested in figuring out if Merlin can do actual magic. And he has this moment, this is not a spoiler for the story, which is great. He has this moment where he thinks, holy crap, this Merlin guy, one, can't do real magic, and two, he drank his own flavor aid. Like, he thinks he can do magic, and he's surprised that it doesn't work every time.
That's funny.
Maybe Faust is like that. Maybe he fell for his own story.
He's an educated fellow, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, he is. In the story, for sure. After his death, the real Faust, he becomes the main character of this folk legend. And as you said, Noel, Faust is a real smarty pants. He's an autodidact. He's what will later be called a Renaissance man. He is unhappy with life, even though because he knows most things, but he wants to know everything. And he's
That's
partied.
the thing,
Yeah,
man.
he's partied pretty hard, but he wants to have all the hardest of parties.
Isn't that funny, though? I mean, even in the creation myth or whatever, I don't mean to be dismissive, but Adam and Eve, the idea that the snake convinced Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge. Knowledge is almost cast as like, you shouldn't have all the knowledge. That can be damning or it can be corrupting. Right?
Sure. I mean, intelligence after a certain threshold is not evolutionarily advantageous, unfortunately. But but this is okay. This is our guy. So there's something like Icarus-esque about him. He wants more. He wants to get closer and closer to the sun here, figuratively speaking. So he knows a lot already. He just doesn't know everything. He leverages his knowledge of the dark arts. He goes to a crossroads, makes the right sigils, signs, and incantations, and he attempts to summon Satan. The actual Satan doesn't appear, but to our earlier point, he sends one of his boys. He sends his representative, Mephistopheles, really cool name. And Mephistopheles makes a deal with him. He says, look, Faust, you can tell magic is real. I got a lot of these demon superpowers. And if you agree to give me your soul in the future, then I will be at your beck and call. You can ask me, Mephistopheles, do this magic thing, and boom, it's going to be done, buddy. Don't worry about it. I got you for a number of years. And Faust is like, what happens after, 7 years? That's a common one. What happens?
I think it was like 6 or 7 years, like 7 years.
Because it varies depending on the story, but it's a specific window of time. And after that time period expires, Faust will be damned, be erased from earth, and his soul will labor in eternal slavery.
And he's cool with this? It wasn't a bait and switch? Does he really spell it all out for him?
Yes. Yeah. That's how the D&D alignment of, was it legalistic evil? Dylan, what's that? Lawful evil. Lawful evil in D&D.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at this point, it's really hard to feel bad for old Fausty. Because he knows exactly what he's doing. He's not really being tricked. There's no monkey's paw hidden consequences here. It's all spelled out for him. He just wants it that bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. He's fine with it at first because future Faust might as well be a different person, a stranger, just the way like Sunday Ben or Next Day Noel or Matt Tomorrow might all be different people if you want to have a lazy Saturday. So he and Mephistopheles get into all sorts of shenanigans. I don't know why I had spurts of shenanigans there. I think I was doing a joke, but all right. So in the tragical history of the life and death of Dr. Faustus, that's one by Marlowe, things do not end well. Faust does try to get out of his contract unsuccessfully. He wrongs a bunch of people on the way, and he does not hit redemption. He goes to hell.
Well, it's also one of those things where past you making a deal that future you might not really be as excited about. It's another example, or at least a parable here, I guess, where it's about kind of not having your mouth write a check that you're whatever can't cash, down the line. It's like, oh my God, why did I do that? It's really important to think ahead and think about future you a little bit, because I guess I was a little foggy on the fact that he knew the consequences. He just thought it was worth it. And if I'm not mistaken, at least in some of the dramatizations, he sort of finds love in that period and is like very much like finds the happiness that he always wanted out and realizes maybe that all of those worldly things aren't that important and sort of grows a little bit, only to be rug pulled when the time comes and the devil shows up and calls in his bargain.
Right. He does in a later story, the one by Goethe, Faust does turn things around at the end. And it's like you were saying, Noel, it's thanks to the love of a woman that he did wrong in a very serious way. But she sticks by him, and then he has serious acts of penitence toward God. And because this woman intercedes for him on his behalf to pray for his forgiveness, he starts to turn around a little earlier than in the original story. He reaches the end of the contract. He says, maybe now that I am future Faust, maybe this was a bad idea. Oh, past Faust, you jackass. So he does, in the second version, he does reach redemption. This is the basis for countless other works of film and fiction. You don't have to read this story or the plays to know it already.
Just the term Faustian bargain gets thrown around all the time for just that exact thing, where you, in the moment, make a deal that when the time comes, you utterly regret and is not ultimately in your best interest.
Mm-hmm. The story is a nice inversion of the late 1400s. Well, let's say the 1400s, 1500s, and a lot of time before that, where only women could become servants of the devil. And that's, at least in the Malleus Maleficarum, that's one of the things. You had to be a woman to be a servant of the devil in one of these things, or you had to be tempted essentially by one of these witches to take yourself in. At least in this case, it's a male figure that is doing the wrong stuff and being tempted and is the bad guy.
Oh, and in another case, even popes have been accused of selling their souls. Pope Sylvester II. He was a real smart guy. he is credited with inventing things like a kind of pendulum clock and the hydraulic organ. He is also, he's often cited as one of the reasons Western Europe started using the Arabic numeral system, which was controversial. He never publicly said he sold his soul, but when he died, because so many popes have enemies in the church and they all kind of hate each other, after he died, these rumors started spreading, and all his critics said, you know what? Nobody is actually that smart. Not on their own. How did he do it? What, was he reading books like a nerd? Nah.
Had to have been the devil. Yeah, it's true. All those inventions, this idea of that profound knowledge, kind of, going back to the idea of knowledge being corrupting or in some way from the forces of the infernal. This was more than anything, like you said, Ben, a product of politicking. The people who were against Sylvester may have genuinely believed that he was up to something, but it's more likely that they didn't like that dialogue you mentioned, Ben, with some of the great thinkers of the Arab world. They considered that perhaps to be a bit of heresy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, right? Because you think Islamophobia is bad now? Go back a few centuries.
Well, wasn't he also one that was trying to kind of root out some of the corrupt forces of corruption within the organization, the church?
100%, right? And I love that you're bringing that up. He was specifically fighting against the widespread practice of something called simony, spelled like Simon with a Y, indulgences, buying or selling of offices, just financial corruption in the church, which continues today.
That's right. Yeah, tithing and stuff. I mean, whatever, like tithe, you give your money to whatever cause you think is worthy of it, but there has historically been many examples of monetary corruption, whether it be, buy your way to a clean slate or, the ability to eat butter when you want.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. Or to break the diet and fasting rules, that kind of thing, right? We also know, look, those are some of the fancy historical versions of selling one's soul to the devil, but there's an entirely different genre of story, which is, I think, a lot more fun. Folk heroes who manage through wit and chance to outsmart infernal powers. They get one over on the forces of hell. Being here in the fair metropolis of Atlanta, folks, our most familiar reference to this is the song "The Devil Went Down to Georgia." Remember that?
He's looking for a soul to steal.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Fire on the Mountain, Run, Boy. Oh, it gives me chills. It's really good. Charlie Daniels Band.
Yeah.
Excellent tune and such a cool story. And again, this Faustian bargain, but it's flipped because our boy, Johnny, is going toe-to-toe with the devil, and he comes out on top. He's not really making a deal. He's just that good.
And he's ballsy. Yeah. So this is
shredding that fiddle, by the way. That's what we're talking about.
The original version of this would be he goes down to Georgia and makes a deal with the devil so he can play the fiddle the way he can, right?
I don't know, though.
That's the way a bargain would be made.
The original trope, yeah.
What
I'm saying is this is an inversion of that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's beautiful. I
think
agree.
It's really neat.
And this is an echo of all sorts of similar folkloric stories of the kind of unconventional maverick character who may not be book smart, but they have a lot of street smarts, like old Bittenbinder from Mulaney's childhood. Another example of this is Samandur the Learned, who's an Icelandic folk hero, or I guess Samandur the Learned. He was an Icelandic priest and scholar from like the 1000s to the 1100s. Also, he's a real dude. Also, when he died, he became a larger-than-life folklore character. And this guy routinely tricks the devil into helping him out with stuff. So many stories that, honestly, the devil looks kind of like a klutz and a goon.
Can I also just really quickly double back to Johnny and the devil went down? Sure. He does make a bargain. The bargain is, if I can't outplay you, you get my soul. Right. And if I do, win, then I get a gold fiddle, a magical gold fiddle. But it's not like he's making the bargain in order to achieve his abilities. He's already got those, and he's basically saying, yeah, I'll go toe-to-toe with you, the devil.
And if you lose, the devil will get your soul.
The
The devil said, I'll start this show, and fire flew from his fingers as he rosined up his bow. Oh, okay. Nope, getting too far into it. But yes.
Y'all listen to it if you have. I'm sure it's a good hang from front to back. Just give it a listen. It's a really good Halloween song.
It's somehow not awkward country hip hop.
Yes. And it's not the greatest song in the world, but it is a tribute.
It's a tribute. Yeah. So back to Iceland, in several different stories, we see things like, one example would be Simon Der goes to the devil and says, I need a trip back home to Iceland from Europe, and I'll make a deal with you. You change into a seal and carry me across the waters, and then at the end, I'll give you my soul. And at the end, instead of giving up his soul, maybe this is funnier in Icelandic, or sounds more clever, he bonks Satan on the head with a Bible while Satan is still a seal, and then he runs away.
That's pretty funny.
And Satan's like, oh no, if I weren't a seal, I would I would get you.
How did he know about the bonk and run clause?
100%. It also makes me think of, like, you know what? The devil, I will sell you my soul for double the Delta Sky Miles. You know, like it's a little bit of an underwhelming deal. He's getting a ride.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I guess, in those days it was, a lot to navigate that kind of journey, but still, you think he would have asked for a few little add-ons.
He does swindle Satan into teaching him the dark arts at Iceland's version of the Skolamans, or the Black School, and he escapes every single time in the story.
Nice.
If you like stories about Skolamans and dark arts institutions, please check out Krabat. I think in English it's The Satanic Mill. It's a young adult story that I recently reread, and it is just a banger for Halloween.
Nice.
Yeah, The Satanic Mill. I think for anybody who wants to give a kid a spooky story, I would say this is appropriate if you're like 10 or 11, I think would be the entry level for that story.
Heck yeah.
That's awesome. I was going to ask you to spell it, because how did...
Krabat.
Got it. Awesome. Guys, can you imagine riding a seal through the waters that between Iceland and wherever you're heading to in Europe?
Doesn't seem like you'd make it. Seems like you freeze.
Feels like depends on the kind of seal too,
Yeah.
But it feels like one wouldn't do the job.
Agreed.
And there are literally other creatures in the sea that would be better transport.
And doesn't this also sort of remind you of like Greek mythology, like Zeus turning into a swan and having intercourse with a woman and all of that kind of stuff? You know what I mean? Like it has that certain fantastical quality to it. Like, I don't know that this is meant to be taken at face value.
Maybe he got caught getting sexy with a seal in real life and had to come up with a story to rationalize it.
Okay.
Stranger things have happened.
And Christianity was born.
Yeah, right. There's another guy, John Fian. This is a not a folk hero story. This is one of the darker ones. This is what we mean when we talk about political assassination. Here's a tale, Dylan. If we could get some old timey, court music, something with a fife. I don't know. You're the expert at this. So it's 1589. There's a guy named King James VI of Scotland. He's going to marry a lady named Princess Anne of Denmark. The princess sails to Scotland, and the weather turns on them. So her crew has to call the journey short and find shelter in Norway. They blame the storms on malevolent witches, and the king is saying, these witches are trying to ruin our marriage. And because this wasn't just some random dude or cheesemonger or fishmonger, because it was the king saying this, Denmark and Scotland instituted large-scale inquisitions. And for 2 years, they hunted sorcerers, all because the weather was bad. When they were trying to make this marriage happen, King James personally supervised some of the tortures and examinations, and one guy who got accused was Dr. John Fian. FIAN.
He was named by another suspected practitioner of the dark arts named Gillis Duncan. Again, under extreme torture. Gillis confessed or stated, or began rather, to name names of all sorts of people that they counted as witchy colleagues, warlocky colleagues as well. And the Inquisitors were super into this information, as you would imagine they might be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they like every aspect of it, man. And they tortured the heck out of John. Initially, he said, I got nothing to confess. And they beat the crap out of him, beat the tar out of him, beat the Christ out of him. They burned him. They broke his bones, you name it. We don't have to get into all the ways they tortured him, but if you can picture most forms of torture, they probably did it. And so finally, he confesses, and he says, okay, my soul belongs to the devil. I made a deal with the devil a long time ago. And then he starts, similar to like killers who are locked up for life, who make false confessions to get favors in prison. Mm-hmm. He starts regaling the court with all these stories. He says, I've bewitched women and men alike. It doesn't matter to me. Also, one time I had a spell that went wrong, so I slept with a cow. My bad.
Bro, have you thought about just the simple answer that the longer he's telling compelling stories in real time, that's time that they won't be torturing him. Just literally that simple. If you keep gabbing, keep yapping about devil stuff, they're going to be listening intently rather than shoving hot metal rods up your pee hole.
Yeah. Similar to 1001 Arabian Nights, right? Where if you keep telling the stories, you can put off your death.
It's like a filibuster, you know?
It is. He filibustered. He filibustered the court, Noel, and he does promise to renounce Satan. He said, the devil came to visit me in the night with a white wand in his hand. He tried to persuade me to keep his vow and serve him, but I castigated the archfiend, telling him I utterly forsake thee.
Oof, utterly.
Utterly. Cow jokes. And so, so the devil supposedly breaks the white wand and says, that once ere thou die, thou shalt be mine. So he's like, look, whatever, you can't break the deal. When you die, John, I'm coming for you. The court believed most of his story, by the way, and he eventually escapes custody. He steals the jailhouse key. He goes on the lam. The authorities catch up to him, and this time they just torture him to kill him. They're not really asking questions. Yeah.
Just for funsies at this point.
Just for funsies. And I guess we should end on some more positive things. Musicians, right? Mm-hmm. Musicians are a big part of selling one's soul, or they occur in those stories.
And that Charlie Daniels tune is very much inspired by this Robert Johnson story, for example, that you also beautifully quoted. I don't think we read it at the beginning of the episode in the doc here. Me and the devil was walking by my side. Me and the devil woo was walking by my side, from Me and the Devil Blues by Robert Johnson.
Yeah, this is interesting. We'll fast forward for one. Paganini, we should mention. We got a Ridiculous History episode about this. It's a violinist. Mm-hmm. Kind of like you, Noel. Niccolo Paganini he's a rock star musician.
He's 1800s. He was beloved by the ladies, and he could shred that fiddle for sure.
Yeah, he was real weird with it, like a 1980s heavy metal lead guitarist. The way he played violin, and people started joking he sold his soul to the devil so he could be a good violinist. But here's the thing: it started as a joke, and then some people, maybe more credulous people, would go see him perform in concert. And then more than one of those folks would walk away thinking, holy crap, maybe he did sell his soul.
He was just that good.
He was just that good. But that's...
Do check out that episode. There's some other interesting details that I remember being surprised by from that story.
Yeah, and the name's just fun to say. Paganini. I don't know what it reminds me of, but it's something delicious.
Panini.
Reminds me of the guy that created the Smurfs. I don't know why. Peo is his name? No, it's unrelated.
I think maybe they're all related. Pressed sandwiches, the Smurfs, and devil-worshipping violinist.
I would sell my soul for a good pressed sandwich.
Yeah, I would sell... I want to get into the idea of fractional soul selling, or can you lease your soul? Can you
That's right.
Airbnb
can
it?
you share? Can you sell a portion of it?
Sublet.
Yeah,
there you go.
Exactly. What other financial mechanism should we apply to the soul selling market? I feel like there are futures here. There's plenty of room, speculation, options, commodities.
Yeah, sell a put or a call, against your soul.
You can
I still don't fully understand.
You can short someone's soul.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
All right, the last one, the one that you set up so beautifully there. Robert or Bobby Johnson versus Tommy Johnson. Robert Johnson's the guy you're going to hear about the most. He's featured in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? This dude who sold his soul at the crossroads to the devil. The devil showed up in midnight, tuned his guitar. He made a deal. But that story is based on an earlier guy named Tommy Johnson from the Mississippi Delta, United States. Very active in the movement that was sometimes called the Delta Blues, sometimes called the Devil's Blues.
Well, and I don't believe it's certainly meant to be a one-to-one of this character, but in Sinners, there's a great character who's sort of the perspective character who the movie starts off with him wandering into the church with his smashed guitar and looking all effed up, and you wonder what happened to this guy, and your mind immediately jumps to dude made a deal with the devil so that he could, rock that sweet, sweet Delta blues.
Yeah, and it's weird to hear historical accounts of Tommy Johnson, who is, again, a real person. So is Robert Johnson. But
there's recordings. There are absolutely, you can find really cool sounding archival recordings of Robert Johnson.
Just haunting. I love it. And so, guys, absolute legend. The thing with Tommy Johnson is, according to people who were around at the time, who are on record, Tommy Johnson originally was not that good at guitar. They said he was just making noise, and he got run out of juke joints when the audience didn't dig his stuff. So he disappears. And when he comes back, he's really, really good. And people couldn't explain the sudden jump in talent and acumen and ability. And so he said, I got a tip. You visit the crossroads at midnight. This mysterious stranger meets you, tunes your guitar, make a deal with him. You become the world's best musician. And aside from the supernatural stuff, the timeline, the chain of events seems legit. Tommy Johnson leaned into this too, because it was great marketing.
Clearly, we're talking about it today.
Right. And Robert Johnson leaned into it, kind of the way like Alice Cooper might lean into satanic rumors, even though, as Wayne's World proved, he's like the nicest guy.
Does this guy know how to party or what?
Exactly.
I saw Alice Cooper at a local music festival a handful of years ago.
Yeah.
And it was one of the coolest live shows I've ever seen. Had a giant spooky castle backdrop.
Yeah.
And, like a guillotine comes out at one point. He cuts his head off. And it's so theatrical. It was a lot of fun. Highly recommend checking out Alice Cooper if he comes around.
And then he like goes backstage and puts on his comfy socks and has some Earl Grey.
He loves playing golf, too. And he also apparently volunteers at his local soup kitchen, like on the regular. Really good guy.
Cool guy. We also, there was one twist. There are so many other examples.
So wait, Tommy and Robert, are they just kind of interchanged because they're similar and the story sort of gets attributed to both? Because I guess I didn't know about Tommy, but I certainly know about Robert.
Yeah, the story gets kind of muddied. And even though they have the same last name, they're not related. But they're both phenomenal musicians. And we'd love to hear your favorite folk tales about the devil. Please send them our way. We are sponges for this. It's always a good read. Here's the twist, or the weird thing I wanted to ask you guys about as we approach the end of tonight's episode. Returning to the concept of how certain denominations of Christianity feel it is impossible to sell one's soul, or it is possible. Is it logically not also kind of selling your soul when you accept Christianity, or when you sign up for that version of God? You're just selling it to the good guys?
No, that's cool, man. That's the one we accept. That one's fine. Yes, of course it is, right? You're they even described it that way in the rhetoric, or if youth group kind of talk, giving your soul to Jesus, giving your soul to God,
Give yourself.
But I think that's interesting because the implication is if God truly was the creator and created you, then doesn't he already own your soul? Do you really have to give it willingly? The whole idea of giving it willingly always strikes me as a little interesting and convenient in terms of that aspect of control.
Yeah. It's just something I've been pondering just on an academic philosophical level. I'd love to hear I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on this. I mean, I don't know. Do you guys believe it's possible for someone to actually sell their soul? And bonus question, if you could name one person right now that might have pulled it off, who would that person be? We'd love to hear from you folks.
Don't understand the logistics of it. How does one transfer a soul? Does it stay inside of you?
Do you get like a stamp?
Does it go in a jar?
Is it like Bitcoin? Do you have like a ledger and a little secret number or code?
But it also been, we didn't really talk much about this, but the soul, as it's described in a lot of these religions, is the life force, is the thing that makes you alive. And if I'm not mistaken, there was another Simpsons thing where Bart sells his soul. Yeah. And he, all of a sudden, like, he can't like do normal people things, or he's sort of like, he's not a ghost, but he's sort of got ghost-like qualities. It sort of speaks to that idea of you are no longer human when you don't have your soul.
Or fully present on the earth.
Exactly.
Perhaps you become some sort of demigod, and then you could begin emblazing your name in gold letters across buildings and properties, things throughout the earth.
Ballrooms even.
I'm a humanist, Kevin. Maybe the last humanist. Sorry, I love Devil's Advocate.
What a schlocky, delightful film.
Who are you carrying? Nope. We're not. You guys have to put up with that too much for me, folks. We can't wait to hear your thoughts. Happy Halloween. This will be coming to you after the actual holiday, but hey, it's always Halloween in America. So tell us your thoughts. You can find us online. You can call us on the phone. You can reach us on email.
That's right. Find us at The Handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on Facebook with our Facebook group, Here's Where It Gets Crazy, on X, FK8, Twitter, and on YouTube with video content galore for your perusal. On Instagram and TikTok, however, we're Conspiracy Stuff Show.
Call our voicemail system, 1-833-STDWYTK. When you call in, give yourself a cool nickname and let us know if we can use your name and message on the air. If you want to send us an email, you can do that too. We are
the entities that read each piece of correspondence we receive. Be well aware, yet unafraid. Sometimes the void writes back. Something wicked this way comes, and we hope it's an email from you. Conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.